hello, and thank you so much for joining me for the podcast of the True Power from Within. I do pray each and every day that this podcast touches you in the most amazing and encouraging way. So, if you're streaming live on Facebook, I've come a little early this morning because I have something strong this morning. So, I'm going to hopefully not be long, but hopefully I'll be strong, right? So one of my most favorite topics is vision, right? I've done a lot of personal development on vision and purpose, and I actually recreated my vision board the other day. And it took me a while because I kept putting it off because I kept praying that I'm like, God, I want your vision, right? I want your vision for my life. I don't want my vision, because in life as humans, right, we get, our vision gets obscured by society, right? So the vision in society is money, cars, big houses. This is what society tells us, right? This is the vision. But there's a different vision that God has for you, right? And I'm coming out of Mark chapter 8. And so I was like, God, let's talk about the blind man, right? Let's talk about Jesus healing the blind man. But when I tell you Mark chapter 8, like, encompasses all of the promise, right? The promise, the prayer, the vision, and then then the promise and the testing and all of these things, right? So like I went to one part of Mark chapter 8, and then I was like, I backtracked. I went back to the beginning because I started at verse 22, right? 22 to 25. And then I started backtracking, right? And then I went to the very end of chapter 8. And I was reading and I was like, there's more to this, right? And so when I was creating my vision board, I prayed for days that God would give me the visions of his vision for my life, not my vision for my life, because my vision for my life would encompass materialistic things, right? Would encompass, making sure my family is wealthy and we have fancy cars and fancy houses. And, that's just what society tells us our vision should be, right? But here I want to start with chapter 8 in Mark, verse 22. Okay, because this is where the vision begins, right? So Jesus and his followers came to Bethsaida. Some people brought a blind man to Jesus, right? They begged Jesus to touch the man. So Jesus held the man's hand, led him out of the village, then spit on the man's eyes. Jesus put his hands on the blind man and asked him, "Can you see now?" The blind man looked up and said, "Yes, I see. They look like trees walking around." I don't know if y'all caught that, but let me tell you what I caught. I know that when I was born, I was not born blind, right? I could very much see, right? I very much had vision, right? And then things in our life begin to happen, right? And there's two things that I want you to see in these particular scriptures, right? One, his intention was to heal this blind man, right? But do you see what he did first, right? Before he could give him vision, he had to lead him out of the village. And I think that's very, very important, because sometimes we know we're not born blind, right? We can very much see. But over the years, our village, right, dims our vision. People telling us we're never going to be anything. People telling us that we're going to be addicts the rest of our life. People telling us that we're going to continue to go in and out of prison. People telling us that we're not pretty enough, or we're not good enough, or we're not lovable, or, whatever it is that you have been told your entire life that has obscured your vision from what God has for you in your life, right? And we allow people, our village, right? A lot of times it's our family, it's our closest friends, right? We get hurt, right? We get lied to, we get done wrong, we get abused, we have trauma. All of these things in our life from the village obscures our vision to where we are blind to the vision that God has for us. We are blind at the vision that we can be whole. We are blind to the vision that we are not good enough, right? We get blind to all of these things in life that obscures our vision, right? So we see that Jesus had to lead him out, right? Sometimes in our life, in order for us to get our true vision from God, we've got to get out of the village. We got to get away from the people who have hurt us, to the people that have talked down on us, to the people that are toxic in our lives. We've got to get out of that. And I know that at one point in my life, God set me down in prison because he needed to lead me out of the village, right? So that he could place the vision upon my life, so that he could spit in my eyes, so to speak, and begin to heal me, right? But that I could get my vision back, so that he could give me the vision that he has for my life, and not the vision that everybody else is saying that I'm going to have in my life. Let me say that again. Jesus is going to lead you out of the village, right? So that he can give you the vision that he wants you to have, and not the vision that everybody else has for you. And then there's another thing that I want you to see in these particular scriptures. It says that he spit on the man's eyes once, right? And then he asked the man, "Can you see now?" The blind man looked up and said, "Yes, I see people. They look like trees walking." To me, this says that this man has not always been blind. He's not always been without vision. Because how would he know what trees look like if he has been without vision his whole life? How would he know what people look like? Right? Unless he has not always been without vision. So I think a big thing is that, I feel like what he's trying to show us here is that he will restore your vision. Right? But he's going to begin to restore your vision, but you're going to have a moment of blurriness. Right? And in that blurriness, it's going to cause us to be vulnerable. Right? We have to be vulnerable, right? Because the blurriness, when you're blind, right, you're very vulnerable, right? Because you have to trust and believe everything that everybody tells you, right? You have to be led to places because you don't know where you're going, right? If I was to close my eyes right now and I was to walk outside to my vehicle, or outside to my trash can, or outside to my mailbox, right? I would probably trip over something. I would probably run into something, right? Because I cannot see. So I am vulnerable to the things around me, right? So when God is giving you a vision, when he's brought you out of the village, right? He's in the process of healing you, right? He's in the process of giving you vision. There's going to be a blurry moment. And in that blurry moment, you're still going to have the weaknesses. You're still going to have the moments in time where you don't completely see what God is trying to do, right? It's maybe in that not so dark season, but yet dark season, because you're still trying to learn and grow, and you're really trying to get into the word of God. You're really trying to pray. You're really trying to believe in his promises, and you really just want to become one with God, and you really just want to be healed. But there's this blurry season. There's this moment where you say, "I see you, Jesus. I see what you're trying to do, but yet I still have some blind spots. I'm not completely healed yet, but you brought me out of the village and now it's a little blurry." I know that I go through that, right? Because I'm big on vision and I'm big on purpose, but I always had my vision. My vision board last year, although God brought many of those things to pass, but my vision board last year was about cars, money, and houses. And I got into prayer with Jesus and I said, Jesus, I or with God, and I'm like, it's blurry, right? I can be the first one to admit that my vision was a worldly vision and not a godly vision. And when I got into that prayer and I got into that vulnerability moment saying, God, it is blurry, right? I feel the stirring on the inside. I can see people, they look like trees, right? I can see the vision. I can feel it stirring up on the inside of me, but God, it's still a little blurry. It's still a little blurry. Can you help me out here, right? I want to make my vision board. I want to make my prayer board. I want to speak it into existence because we do see that it says, write it down and make it plain, right? A man without vision will perish. And it says, write it down and make it plain. And I have this giant white board. And I said, I'm going to put my vision on here. But God, I need my vision to be your vision, right? For my life, because I've been walking around blind for so many years. I have been allowing other people to dictate what my vision should be in this world. I have allowed social media to dictate what my vision should be in this world. I have allowed other people to dictate what my vision should be in this world. And God, I want to be one with you, and I want my vision to be your vision. Show me what that is, right? Because it's in those moments of blurriness that we need to make sure that we are praying, right? We're praying to God. We are in an intimate relationship with him. We are asking to be filled with the Holy Spirit. We are asking God to lead us and guide us in the way that he wants us to go and not in the way that we want to go. Because if it was us, we will go back to our comfortable state. Right? Because we've always heard people tell us we weren't good enough. We've always heard people tell us that we're always going to be an addict. We're never going to amount to anything. Nobody is going to love us. We are ugly. We are too fat. We are too skinny. We have too many wrinkles. We have too much cellulite. We will go back to being blind if we do not allow Jesus to be the healer in our life and the producer of our vision. And sometimes when we get that vision inside of us, right? And we feel like we're going on the right path, right? And then we see one thing from our past pop up, right? I know this morning I saw a post from 2009, right? When I was in the pit of my addiction, thinking I was the cutest thing that ever walked the face of this earth, okay? And in that post, I was thanking all of my family members for sticking by me, when in reality, I was just doing that on social media because there wasn't nobody there for me. Not one single person was there, except if they needed something from me. Right? Because I was still in the village. I had been hurt. I had been talked about. I had been abused. I had so much trauma and anger and resentment and bitterness. But here I am, still just as blind, thinking all of these people that were not there. Because I was blind to the vision. I was still in the village, right? I was still in the village. Jesus had not led me out of the village yet. I was still there. I was still very much stuck. I was still very much traumatized. I was still very much angry. But when God set me still in that prison, he spit in my eyes and began to give me the vision, but it was still blurry. It was still blurry because I had some growing to do. It was still blurry because I still had some trauma to deal with. It was blurry because I still needed to deal with that unforgiveness that I had not yet caught grasp of. I was still very much blind, but I had just a glimpse of the vision. And then, as I go through the years and God increases that vision, as I get into a greater relationship with Him, He begins to wipe the blurriness from my eyes and allows me to see His vision. Because I'm praying over this vision board. Now listen here very closely, okay? I'm praying over this vision board. And He brought up two things that I'd never even imagined. One, we've talked about, right? But when He brought it to me, it was something far greater and far scarier than I had imagined. I'm going to tell you what those are. One of them is, He said, women's ministry. Women's ministry. And I didn't argue. I printed it out, I cut it out, and I put it on the vision board. Do I know how that's going to happen yet? No. And the other one was very plain and very clear. And it said Tucker Ministry Complex. What? You know what is included in that complex? A transitional home, a resource center, a domestic violence shelter, and groups to help with mental health, to help domestic violence survivors, help men that are trying to get back on their feet. Like, listen, how in the world is that going to happen? It's about having the vision, about having the God vision. And here's another thing that comes along with vision, and that is prayer, perseverance, and stewardship. We have been wanting to buy a home for several years now. It hasn't happened yet. But again, God told me to put a home on my vision board. But He also said very plainly to me, if I don't bless you with this home in the next 12 months, can you be grateful for the home I do bless you with? Because the reality is our daughter has outgrown our house, okay? She is big, and we live in a 2-story home. So our reality tells us that we can't stay here because we're not going to have the capacity to carry her up and down them stairs at 80 and 90 pounds the way she's gaining weight. But He says, if I don't bless you to buy a home, can you persevere and be a good steward over the home that I do bless you with until I bring that dream home to pass? Now, to me, that was that was kind of disappointing, right? Because He's not saying He's not going to give us the home, but He's saying, are you going to persevere until I do give you the home? You're going to be a good steward. Are you going to continue to pray to me even when you don't get exactly what you want, but can you be grateful in the blurry moments? Can you be grateful in those moments when you have to have prayer, when you have to continue to pray and continue to believe, because the vision is not completely there yet? And as I was going through this, and like I said, that I had backtracked, right? At the beginning of Mark chapter 8, it was where Jesus was feeding the 4,000, right? And we see that Jesus took the bread, he gave thanks to God, right? And he was able to feed 4,000, right? Can we take the little bit that we have and give thanks to God for what we do have, but still trusting in the vision for the future? If we don't get everything that we want in this season, can we still persevere and be a good steward until the vision is plain? Right? And so we see that Jesus is praying, right? We see the provision in this, right? The provision was he was able to feed 4,000 people off of 7 loaves of bread. Okay? We see that here. But then if you go down to the next one, we see where the Pharisees try to test Jesus. People are going to test you. Your vision is going to be tested, right? And usually the vision becomes tested in the village. The village that Jesus brought you out of, that he led you out when you were blind, in those seasons, you're going to be tested. Right? You're going to be tested. I'm trying to heal you, but are you going to go back? I'm trying to bring you out of this, but are you going to go back? Are you going to go back into that zone where people are telling you that you're not enough? Are you going to go back into that when I've already brought you out, right? I've already showed you the provision, but in the moments of testing, in the seasons of testing, are you going to go back to that village? The very village that I brought you out of? And when I tell you the village, I'm not just saying physically, but we can also go back to the village mentally. Sometimes when we have bad experiences, or we have trauma, or we have addiction, or bad breaks, bad relationships, all of that, mentally, sometimes if something comes up, we mentally go back to that season, right? We mentally go back to the hurt, the pain, the distrust, the insecurities, right? Because we saw something that reminded us of that season. But God is saying, I've given you the vision, right? I've brought you out of the village, right? You're going to have these moments of testing, right? People are going to test you. People are going to pop up out of nowhere because I'm trying to give you a vision, but yet they want you to go back to the village. And are you going to be strong enough to know that even though it's blurry in this season, right? I've given you some vision. I'm providing for you. You're going through a season of testing, right? But you have to know, because it says in 25, it says, again, Jesus put his hands on the blind man's eyes. Then the man opened his eyes wide. His eyes were healed, and he was able to see everything clearly. Are you going to pass the test for the vision that God has given you in your life? In those blurry seasons, are you willing to be vulnerable and admit that you're still weak in certain areas? Or are we going to put pride and ego into it that in turn will keep us in a blurry season? Because when pride and ego and insecurity and distrust and all of these things begin to bubble up to the surface, and you go back to that village mentally, the test is still going to continue to come. The question is, are you going to be strong enough in that blurry season to say, God, I'm not going to go back. I'm going to pray. I'm going to trust your provision. I am going to persevere. I'm going to be a good steward over my mind, over my body, over my health, and over my vision. Until you open my eyes wide and I can see clearly. And then he says, don't go into that town. Go home. Go home. Do not go back to that town. And I think what he is trying to say to us is, don't go back to the things that broke you, right? Because he's brought you out of those things, right? Your vision may be blurry, but it's going to get clear, right? You may not see the business going where you want it to go. You may not see the promotion in your near future, right? But God says, are you going to be a good steward in the blurry seasons? Are you going to be a good steward in those moments that, you know, it's not absolutely clear? You feel the stirring on the inside. You feel God doing something and moving something in your life. But are you going to be a good steward and persevere in the moments when you have to pray? I'm just providing the provision for you right now, and you're not seeing the blessing. In those times that you're being tested by that village, right? You're being tested in your mind. You're being tested in your body. Can you still stay focused on the vision that I have stirring up on the inside of you, and not the vision that comes in society? Right? And then in the same chapter is where Peter begins to buck the system. Right? And Jesus actually, and then it says, then he criticized Peter. But here's the thing. Here's what I want to show you in this particular 27 all the way down to the very end, 37. The promise. The promise, right? Jesus tells them what is about to happen, right? He tells them that. He says the Son of Man must be killed and then rise from death after 3 days. But even Peter was like, he criticized him. But Jesus knew the vision. Jesus knew the promise. So what I am telling you today is that the vision that is stirring up on the inside of you, that you have had, and you feel like God is moving in your life, but you're like, I am so blurry. I'm still so weak. I'm still so disqualified. I don't have the experience for this. I am still hurting. I'm still in pain. I still keep seeing these tests coming about, and I'm not actually passing them because I still go back into that mental prison, or the insecurities, or that distrust, or that unforgiveness. I still keep going back there. I'm still blurry. I'm still weak. Jesus, I am going to be vulnerable, right? I'm not going to allow my pride and my egos and my insecurities and my distrust to get me away from the vision, because I know that it's not absolutely clear right now. I know that people look like trees walking around right now, but I know, Father, that you're going to touch my eyes again, and I'm going to see clearly the vision in which you have for my life. But in the season of blurriness, we have to learn to persevere. When I say persevere, I mean, let's talk about it in today's terms, you got to go harder. You got to do things even when nobody's looking. You have to do 170 podcasts and barely have any viewers or followers. You've got to write a book and publish it, and only maybe 200 copies were sold. And then he gives you the assignment to write another one. In those little spurts of the blessings that he's giving you in your life, you've got to be grateful for it. Take the assignment and be obedient, because it's in those things he's going to show you, and he's going to produce the vision in which you have been praying for. So I'm telling you today, don't go back to the village that he brought you out of. Whether that village is mentally or physically or whatever it is, don't go back to that village again. Because even though the vision right now is blurry, okay? And you have to be vulnerable right now because you can't completely see. You've got to admit that you're weak in certain areas. You've got to admit that you're not as strong as you thought you were in some areas. But God says, just hold on. Go home. Don't go back to that village. Because there's going to be a moment that I am going to make sure that you can clearly see the vision in which I have for your life. Today, I am encouraging you to get your God vision. Pray to him. He will show you what the vision is. Write it down and make it plain. Write it down. Make a vision board. Make a prayer board. What do you need to pray for every day? What is the vision that God has for you in your life? And even if your vision right now is not where it needs to be, and that vision board looks like society tells you it should be like, don't worry about it. Just keep praying over it, because God's going to give you the vision that he has for your life. But write it down and make it plain. Somewhere that you have to look at it every single day. Write that prayer board down, the prayers that you need to pray, or the things that you need to pray over every day, in order for you not to go back to the village. I know I pray every day, God, please make me a better person today than I was yesterday. Let me be of you and not of me. Let me be the best wife, the best mom, the best Nana that I possibly know how to be in my life. Let me be a good leader, Lord. Bring the tribe to me. Right? Because sometimes we pick a village that God did not even intend for us to be in. Right? Sometimes we think that our friends, we pick our friends when we need to allow God to pick our friends. Right? Because my husband posted something on social media yesterday that was actually very funny. It was about, when you start a business, right? And if you have a business on social media, you'll understand this concept. But when you start a business, don't count on your family and friends, because they're not going to be the ones to support you. And the post was saying something like, just unfriend all of them and friend strangers, because that's where you're going to get your support from. And that's absolutely the truth. Because when God gives you a vision bigger than the next person, okay, or he gives you a vision because you are one of those people that should have been a statistic, but yet he gives you a God vision for your life and things begin to happen, you're going to see that people do not want to support you, right? Because they can only see you for what you used to be. They can't see you for the vision in which God has given you now. So I want to tell you today, it's time to get your vision back, right? You were not born blind. You became blind through the traumas and the addictions and the abuse and the homelessness and all of the things that you have gone through in your life. That's how you became blind in the village. But God is saying that he has now given you a vision, and it's blurry right now. But if you can just stay in prayer and stay in the provision, like be grateful in the provision right now, that even though you may be being tested, your mind may be tested, your heart may be tested, your body may be tested, your surroundings may be tested, things may be tested, but he's saying stay in prayer, because I've got that provision, and you're blurry, and you've got to be vulnerable, and you've got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to get out of your own head, and you've got to soften your heart, and you've got to pray and ask God to fill you with the Holy Spirit. You've got to do the hard things. But he says, once you do the hard things and you trust me, I am going to make sure that you see clearly, and that your vision and my vision for your life is clear. So I told you I wasn't going to be long, but I was a little longer than normal. I seem like I keep getting longer and longer, but I just felt in my spirit this morning, because I've been dealing with this same thing, this vision, right? And wanting to have a God vision. So I pray today that you too get that God vision, and don't get discouraged in the seasons of blurriness, because it's just God saying, you just need me right now. I just need you to be vulnerable and get rid of the pride and get rid of the ego and admit that you have some weaknesses still, because in your weakness, I am made strong. So it may be blurry right now, but God is going to make sure that your vision is clear. But go to him and get the God vision. not the world vision. Get his vision, because his vision for your life includes abundance. It includes fruitfulness. It includes blessings that, he's pouring out blessings too big for you to receive, right? Because you've got the God vision. So today I encourage you to get in agreement with God and just know that he has a bigger vision for your life than what you see right now. But stay in faith and stay in prayer and know that he is working behind the scenes on your behalf. And I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye bye.